expression. So I'm Catherine. I'm American born. I'm British naturalized. I'm married to an Italian. I am pivoting my life to be more in Italy and have Italy as a base. And the reason why Armin and I wanted to bring you this conversation today is that I had a breakthrough this year in expressing my soul in a commercial way. So oftentimes we think soul expression, we think like, oh, our soul just being free, we're just being happy, we're being joyous. Um, and I wanted to really ground that conversation today. What does it look like to integrate that soul expression into your business, into your products, into your services, into your work, into your life, and have a conversation around that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And then at the end, there will be the opportunity for questions. And I would really love to make this interactive. So anything that you're thinking of as we go along, maybe take notes in the chat, like what you're taking away from the conversation. And that might also help us get some questions for the end. So again, just to introduce myself a little bit further, and I wanted to say marhaban, hello. I've been studying Arabic on Duolingo, so you're going to have to really bear with me. I wanted to say marhaban, and I also wanted to say shukran for having me here. And finally, I wanted to let you all know that I think you're all Malika. I hope that's Queen. I hope that translates. But it's actually been in my soul, like my soul has been called towards the Middle East for a few years now, and I spent some time in Dubai in the pandemic. And your part of the world just really calls to me, like the sights, the smells, the culture, the food, like just everything about your part of the world really, really calls to me. So I hope my dodgy attempt at Arabic lands like a warm hug and not like what is this Western white lady trying to say? Which it can. So I'm just testing. So a little bit about me and my background. So I was born in the United States and grew up there, but I have been living in London for the last 20 years. So how I look, how I talk is from those parts of the world, but I also have an Italian family. I'm married to an Italian. So I'm like many of you, a little bit from everywhere and really love being with different people and different cultures. And when I say I'm a performer, I mean, I grew up as a ballerina. Like I grew up on stage. Like I just loved being in the spotlight. It was my first discovery of a soul calling and a soul purpose, but I didn't know it yet because when you're younger, you just try everything. If you're fortunate to have parents that put you in lots of activities and try to stimulate you in different ways. And it wasn't until I got older and entered into the corporate space that got a bit lost along the way. So enter my work as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. So I have been working for more than 20 years. I know, can you believe it, with this skin, in human resource management, and most recently in diversity, equity, inclusion, or what I'm going to call DEI. For those of you who aren't aware what DEI is, and actually even the letters DEI didn't enter into kind of mainstream conversation or the media until about this year. So diversity, equity, inclusion is like the academic study or the business practice of creating diverse groups of people and inclusive cultures so that everyone can perform to the best of their ability. Everyone can be fully expressed, free to be themselves. And I got into this line of work because part of my purpose is to be a creative vortex leading and healing the feminine. And that won't mean a lot to you probably, but it's very special and dear to me. And it's how I choose what to get involved in and what to say no to. It's like if I if I'm like, can I show up as a creative vortex? Like, can I show up in movement and rally people and communicate a message? Then I know whatever I'm being invited to do is aligned with that purpose. If it doesn't bring me joy, if I'm like, no, like, not feeling that, then I know it's not what I'm meant to be doing. So why did I write a book? A little bit of the journey from the book. Here is the book, The Inclusion Illusion, an HR guide to educating execs on DEI. Again, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is not my first book. This is actually my fourth book. And I'll tell you what's different from this one and the first three. The first three are what I would call passion projects. Um, Two of them were tour guides on UK castles because I had a desire to bring women to castles and share stories, empowering stories of the women who lived there, because there weren't any stories like, because those stories just don't get told, and that made sad again for women because all of the I found shop tasks and it just I couldn't they weren't right for me because we got to have a productivity journal for women. um so those first three books were essentially like hobbies. It was fun for me. They were things that I wanted myself. But what I didn't do was really share about it or enroll other people in being a part of the project, so that when I launched those books, like I sold a couple of books, but then nothing really happened after that because I got bored and moved on to my next passion project. So at the beginning of this year, on January 3rd, to be exact, I woke up and my soul told me, it's time, Catherine. It's time for another book. This one is a DEI book. It's time. It's time to write that book. And I knew this was different than my first three books because my soul hadn't whispered to me for the first three books. But when my soul whispered this to me, I thought, oh no, you can't ignore the whisperings of the soul. If you ignore the whisperings of the soul, you get sad, and eventually you get depressed, and eventually you get sick. But when my soul whispered that to me on January 3rd, I was like, oh my God. I was scared. Like I was scared. I was like, how can my ego kicked in. I was like, who am I? I've only been working in DEI for 5 years. I'm no expert on DEI. Who am I to write a book? And why would anyone want to buy it? But I listened to my soul this time, and I enrolled a book publisher in publishing it and a team to help me do it. And what makes this different is the commercial side. So my soul whispered to me, this is the book. It's aligned with your purpose. It's aligned with your passion. It's aligned with your talent. And the monetization vehicle is a book. But this time, I also had the commercials. So I also thought, okay, practically, like this has to be a business book and this has to help support my business. This needs to be my business calling card. So then explored, what kind of problem am I trying to solve here? And person, um, I found that it was really, really hard for HR people to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. We're supposed to be the experts, but this is a very new field and we're not experts in it. We may be the most expert people in an organization, but we're by no means experts. So I knew it was hard for HR people to talk about this. And I also knew that they were very frustrated with the pace of change in their organization and being blocked by senior leadership who usually poo poo things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. So now I had a problem. Like I knew this was a problem that people wanted to solve. So I created the promise, which is the strap line. So this is a guide for HR people to educate their executives on diversity, equity, inclusion. The product, it is contained in a book. Now, it could also be a training program. There are 9 content chapters. It could also make 9 modules. It could turn into a training program. It could turn into talks. I can do talks on this, like I'm talking to you today. So there are other ways to productize this, but the current product is a book. It has a price. So this was something that was not easy. If you have your own business, you know how hard it is to get the right feeling for what the price should be. Much better to go out and ask people and to do some, what do business books go for on average on Amazon? Between $10 and $15 usually. So I took advice on that. And the purpose of the book in my business is to communicate my message, is to get my methodology, what I'm a stand for, and my core product out there. So that was what was really, really different about this book. And finally, I just want you to think as we head to the second half of our conversation today. So have a think about a project, a piece of work, something that you're trying to get over the line, some result you're trying to produce, and have a think about, whether this is like this is aligned with your purpose, your passion, or talent. And we're going to go a bit deeper into it. In fact, we're going to call it the ikigai. Now, I'm sorry, I'm just realizing now this is a bit of a fuzzy representation. But what our aim here is this middle bit. This is where joy and flow and freedom and everything feels easy, is like when these things are aligned. When I first saw this, I was horribly overwhelmed, but I'm just going to kind of walk you. This is the Japanese concept of ikigai, or reason for living, as made into a Venn diagram by a Westerner who went to Japan and loved the ikigai concept and then tried to make it easier for other people outside of Japan to understand it. So, so in terms of, should I do, is this piece of work I want to do, this result I want to create, this business I want to build? These are kind of the 4 dimensions to start thinking about. So first of all, start thinking about what you're good at, what comes easily to you, your talents, things that you do naturally that other people are like, oh my God, you're so good at that. And when they tell you, you can't believe them because it comes so easy to you. You're like, what are you talking about? And you downplay it. You downplay it. It's no big deal. No big deal at all. So easy. These are your talents. Important ingredient 1. Important ingredient 2, your passion, what you love to do. This is what gives you energy. This is what lights you up. This is what gets you out of bed in the morning. Things you're passionate about. Usually somewhere in there related to people. Usually, but not always. But it gives you energy. It's something that you want to integrate more into your life because it is a source. It is a source of energy. It is a source of power. Finally, your external world, what the world needs. The world needs a lot of stuff. So that's the good news. Good news is anything we can produce, probably the world needs, because it does need so much. So think about, I mean, if you go out onto the street, if you go into a local shop, if you ask anybody, what do you need? People will always tell you. So that's the 3rd ingredient. The 4th ingredient is the monetization. So what will people actually pay you for? If you can line up these 4 things, it's a tricky balance. I'll be honest. I usually have like 2 or 3 out of the 4 kind of handled, and there's usually like 1 that's the weakest. And I find that when I talk to women, it's this one down here. What can I be paid for? We're really rubbish at asking for what we're worth. It's really hard for us to even ask the question, what would you pay for this? But if you focus on people's problems, like what are they challenged by, really challenged by, and listen, you start to realize, actually, I've got to ask the question, what's solving this problem? What's the value of it worth? Because maybe you can help. So if you start asking oh, I hear you're really struggling with getting new customers. What would it be like? If you could solve that problem, if you could have 10 new customers today, how much would you be willing to pay to solve that problem? And that really helps open up the conversation. So, how to have these difficult conversations. And this is chapter 7 or 8 in my book, because this is really, really hard for us women. How to have authentically courageous conversations. Because I'm sure already in the last 20 minutes, you've started to think, ooh, now my soul is called to do that project, but I've always said no to it. Or you might be in the thick of trying to deliver something that really means something to you and it's just not moving. So you're probably already starting to think, yeah, there's that conversation I've been putting off that if I actually had that conversation, it would block a lot of things. So it's really simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy. It starts with just establishing the facts, like just what happened, what's happening or what's not happening. So, and think towards love, direct love at the person that you need to have a conversation with. Let's say it's a boss or a customer, people who are really scary, right? So, just start with, okay, let's establish what's happening or what's not happening. I've noticed that date, time, this happens, that doesn't happen. What do you think about that? Do you notice? Do you see that happening or not happening? Just establish the facts, okay? You don't even need to worry about what they think yet. You don't even need to worry about what you're trying to communicate yet. You're just like, let's just communicate what is happening or not happening. Then you can ask them, once you've got that, okay, this is the stuff we're dealing with. Then you can ask them, so what do you think about that? Does that bother you? Does that annoy you? Does that work for you? And then you can come to, this is what you've been worried about the whole time, how to communicate your message. But you can't start to express what's going on for you until you've actually established what is happening and what does the other person think or feel about it. But then once you've expressed what's happening, not happening for you, then you can move to the, okay, so we now get each other's point of view. What can we do about it together? And the hardest thing for people, especially women, is just relaxing into that flow. If you're going well, just go back. Just go back to the previous step. Just ask them how they feel again. Or just go, hey, have we missed a piece of the puzzle that we need to lay out or communicate here? So that is how, whatever is holding you back, whatever you've been putting off, you can get into a healthy and productive conversation with the person that you need to in order to move your project forward. And two things to leave you with. You have a lot more power than you think. So I've just given you tools to have courageous conversations. But here's the different directions that you can direct those conversations towards. So you have both something called hard power and soft power. These terms were coined by a guy named Joseph S. Nye in the 1980s from the US, who actually wrote a book called Soft Power. If you've ever heard the term soft power, you might have been thinking, like I was thinking, is that a way of saying feminine power? Is that just code for like girl power? Like, what is soft power? But Joseph's book, Soft Power, was actually about power dynamics and in public policy, public relations, and like geopolitical strategy. So these are also academic terms. But if you think about your power, and you can call it hard or soft, you can call it feminine or masculine, yin, yang, however you want to call it that resonates with you, call it that. But as women, we tend to have a lot more soft power than we think. We're pretty trained in our masculine, so we're pretty trained to have hard power, like whether that's at the workplace where we're like, okay, systems, processes, policies, tell your subordinates, your juniors what to do, or if you run your own business, tell your employees, your workers what to do. We're highly trained in this, and we have like a huge reservoir of soft power that we don't even know we have a lot of the time, which is rather than going out and like being direct and being forceful, our soft power comes from a place of just being um being who we authentically are. I had this spiritual leader, I met this spiritual leader in Milan, Italy last week, and I just turned up being myself. Um, and I got in the conversation with him that he wasn't used to being around women who were in their soft power, who were like really owning their soft power, who were just okay being who they are naturally, authentically, without apologizing. Um, and it helped me. It was a total blind spot. I didn't realize that sometimes just our being, our presence, is more powerful than being in the masculine, direct, linear um, ways of being. So one thing I want to say about soft power, this last point, this ask and enroll, this is about creating the space for people. Do you want to be involved in this? Like, this is what I'm creating. Would you like to contribute to this? This is like I think attraction would be another word, but that also gets a little bit sexualized. But there's there's something very compelling about just being who you're with. So to all of my sisters out there, I would say focus focus on your soft power, because I promise you've probably been relying a little bit too much on your hard power, and you may produce different results focusing a little bit more in your soft power. So finally, just to kind of wrap of where we can go if you're interested and useful. So we were looking to identify our projects or businesses or books or product services aligned with our soul's calling. How do we express that in the world? What's the difference between something just being a purely commercial endeavor, as opposed to being born out of our soul expression? We looked a bit at the ikigai, so reason for being, our purpose, passion, talent.
I think we're, she's there. Hi, Catherine. We lost you for a bit there.
Hello, back again. Um, so your ikigai, hopefully you saw perhaps a gap that you didn't know you had. Maybe you've been working hard for the money, and you've been maybe like getting paid for your talents, but not necessarily having your passions and your purpose integrated in it. Hopefully now you have a better idea on how to have a courageous conversation, and as well as tapping into your soft power versus your hard power. So I would like to bring back up, well, actually, I think what I can say here is I have loved connecting with you and your community. So if you have any questions for me, we're going to take some now, but also we can connect on LinkedIn together. And my book, The Inclusion Illusion, for this beautiful community, I am giving away free digital copies of the book, and you can visit theinclusionillusion.com. You do have to give me your email address. Sorry, I want to email you useful things in the future. But for your email address, you'll get a free digital copy of The Inclusion Illusion, which, whether you're an HR person and you work in a business, whether you run your own business, whether you just don't know how to talk to your husband or your sons around this DEI stuff, this, empowering women stuff. Maybe you meet men who are like, but what about me? My life is going to crap because I'm a man and now nobody cares about men. Whatever you're dealing with, hopefully you'll get something of value from the book. So hello again, Armin and Lena. Nice to see you.
Hey, hey, I would love to connect with you. I'm in HR and I've been in HR for over 20 years. So for me, yeah, it's interesting working in this environment here in the UAE. Very different from Europe. Definitely very, very, very different. I run my own consultancy. So yeah, it's always yeah, ups and downs and interesting dealing with the different cultures is amazing here because you
Yeah.
get you've got so many different cultures. So yeah, I deal with a lot of different yeah, CEOs and company owners, and yeah, it's always, why don't you have enough women, and yeah, it's a big topic, but it's one of those things here. It's a yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, I mean, next time when you're in Dubai, I would love, love, love to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lena, what I would say about HR, there's a conversation that HR is having with itself that is not very obvious, or rather, there's a conversation we're not having with ourselves, which is how, probably because there's so many women working in the profession, which is we tend to make ourselves like a slave to the organization. Like we
Yeah.
tend to put this, so this is classic. This happens in like every home around the world. But this also happens in every HR department. We're so busy taking care of everyone
Yeah.
else that we
Yeah.
don't take care of ourselves.
No, I'm zero. I don't have time for myself.
No, everyone else comes first. We come
Yep.
last. And also, because we're not taking care of ourselves, there's a statistic in the book 98% of HR professionals declare that they're either burning out or they're on the brink of burnout,
Oh
which
yeah.
basically means everyone in HR is burnt out and no one's talking about it. And no
Yep.
one's going to come to save us. The CEO or the CFO or the CMO or any other C person is not coming to save HR. We have got to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first.
Yep.
Um, and it's part of a wider. It's not just an HR conversation, but
Yeah.
we're not having it, and that's why I'm looking forward to meeting you and
Yeah.
talking more about it.
Yeah, I know, definitely. I mean, it's a completely different way of thinking about HR in this country. And I've tried to do, when I go into clients, I try to change the perspective of what is actually HR. And it's not just about, pushing visas and paying payroll. It's the humanity is missing from the conversation, and you work with the company, not and with the employees and the company in tandem and not against one or the other. So it's there's that, we're like an interface between the two, and yeah, getting that across sometimes it's a bit like it's very tiring.
Lena, I'm curious because I was working for an oil and gas company 2 years ago and built a lot of relationships across the Middle East and North Africa. Um, and I'm curious your perspective on the biggest differences between HR in Europe and HR in Dubai or the Middle East, because you said it was quite different.
It is quite different because here it's more HR is sort of viewed as the bad person. You can't talk to them. They're always like, no, 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 they're going to run to the CEO, and I can't tell them anything private. They're just there for visas and giving me my salary. Nobody understands. We don't trust them. And in Germany, where I come from, and I worked in the UK for 20 years at IBM. So, they can just pick up the phone. We had assisting programs where, the employees can go and voice their concerns. That could never happen here because employees are so afraid of being fired if they raise their voice. And that is the main difference here because, when they lose their job, they lose their visa, they have to leave. you know, and that's the main problem here, you know. In Germany, in the UK, you have whistleblowing, you have all these programs where the employees are protected, which you do not have here. There is no protection. HR will never protect the employees here, and this is it. You know, I always, when I started here, I wanted to make it my mission to change that perspective. But it's trying to get to this older, you know, age old. No, HR is no good, blah blah. You know, so that is really the difference. I can see. Between Europe, the Western world, and here.
Yeah.
And if I have to add to that, Lena and Catherine, the beautiful insight that I have come to realize over the 2 decades of me living here, almost 2 decades of me living in this country, is that this country is so young compared to most other countries in the world, right? And they had not so much of an institutionalization of a lot of things, including laws. I mean, it is a good thing that they are adapting and adopting new technology, new social, structures, even with being an Islamic state. They're doing it very well, but yet the culture, the people, even on the institutional level or the government level, if things are changing, like just today we had the news that it's going to be a mandate that every UAE registered company has to have a woman on the board.
Yeah.
Just today.
Wow.
Just
So
today.
that is, that's a big news, right? It's happening on that level, but then for it to trickle down, it's probably going to take a little while. And that is what we're all facing, and we feel. But at the end of the day, it is a much faster progress than most countries have ever seen in history.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that started with the new labor law, you know, because the new labor, you know, the laws are different. There's a lot more, but it's still there is protection, but the employees still are afraid
they don't know how to
those.
exert their authority as well. And it's just that space, in Europe, in everywhere around the world, most places, there's already a system, there's already use cases that have happened, there's already situations where things have gone legal and everything. There haven't been that many crises for cases or case studies to happen, and then people to feel okay and safe to talk about it more openly. But on the top level, I think the country is doing a fabulous job to actually change the fabric of society.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is a very good contrast, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an expression in the startup world which goes something like, you go to America to innovate, you go to Europe to regulate. And I think the UAE can maybe be the best of both worlds because it is so young. And if the government is already mandating things like every UAE registered company has to have at least one woman on the board, it doesn't need to go to the next level down and the next level and the next level. In chapter 11 of my book, I talk about how to map out your ecosystem. So also the great thing about the UAE is it's not gigantic. Like it's big, but it's also like probably a couple degrees, like you two already, with a couple degrees of separation, probably already know everyone you need to know to really shift the dial on gender equality.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Which is really exciting.
And it's probably the most diverse cultural pot. So we've got people from every other culture bringing that essence of their culture as well. That. You've experienced that. But yes, definitely. I'm very happy about the fact that the young country is taking a very proactive step on bringing everything at the forefront. Well, society has to take its own time, which it has everywhere, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
Great chat, ladies. Thank you so much for your time, Catherine.
No, thank you.
I was excited ever since you told me about your book, and I said, we need to do this. We need to do this when you come down as well. And we need to talk more about what you're doing on your side of the world, what we are doing on our side of the world, and see how we can help all women across in their careers, in building better narratives for themselves, building better strengths for themselves as well as for their, for the next of their kin, for their children, for their culture, for their society. So thank you very much, ladies. Thank you for attending, Lena, and
Thank
for
you.
Dropped Off. It's already live on YouTube, and you can watch it right after we end the meeting.
Thank you very much. And it was lovely meeting you, Catherine.
you.
Yes, please, let's stay in touch. I'll connect to
Nice.
you on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome, ladies.
Fabulous. Can't wait. Thanks again.